Hey there and welcome back. It's James here, and in this video we're going to pick up where we left off. We were talking about data types, and I went through a list of different data types: strings, integers, floats, lists, tuples, dictionaries, and bools. What I want to do now is kind of dive a little bit deeper into each one of those sections. So in this video, we'll start with the first data type that I talked about, and that's the string. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what you can actually do with strings in Python. So the first thing I'm going to do is delete all this code. I'm going to name the string name, right, which is a variable, equals, and I'm going to call this James. So like a lot of computer programming languages, in Python, strings are zero indexed. What that means is it actually starts counting from 0 instead of 1. So when we look at this and we say there are 5 characters, there is actually a way for me to retrieve characters out of that string. For example, if I said print name, it's going to print the whole thing. It retrieves all 5 characters. But maybe I don't want to print the entire string. Maybe I only want to print the first letter. Well, what I can do is put square brackets, and inside of that, I can put a number that tells me what character to print. You know, for most of us, if you're not used to computer programming, you're going to have to say, well, if I want to print J, I'm going to print the first character. So I'll put that in there, and if we hit the run button, you're going to see it actually printed A. And the reason is very simple, because this is a zero indexed language, meaning that it actually starts counting at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I want to print the J, I would actually put 0. And now if I hit run, you can see it printing J. This allows us to do a lot of things with strings because we can actually take out specific characters. So let's say, for example, I only wanted to print the first 3 characters. What I can do is I can put 0, which tells the computer to start printing at the 0 index. And if I want to print the A and the M, I can put a colon and I can put a 3 here. And what this will do is it will print the 0, the 1, and the 2 character, and it will stop at the number 3 character. It won't print it, it'll stop right at it. So if I hit run, you can see it prints jam, right? Because again, J is the 0, A is the 1, M is the 2, and this is our stop. So it stops at that character. I can also use something called negative indexing. So for example, if I typed name -1, what do you think that's going to print? Hit run, and you can see it prints the S because this is 1 spot back from the end. Or if I change this and said name -3, what do you think that will print? Well, S is -1, E is -2, and M is -3. So of course it prints the letter M. Earlier in the video series, I talked about looping through a string. And again, we're going to talk about loops in more detail later in the video series. But for right now, I'll show you another example of this. We'll hit name equals, and this time we'll do Angelica. All right. And what we can do is we can loop through this. So I can say 4 character in name. I can say print character, and if I hit run, we can see it just breaks that down and it prints each character on its own line. And again, we can do this because a string is nothing more than a collection of characters. Okay, it's not actually Angelica, it's just these characters, Angelica. All right, so no matter what I change this to, it doesn't matter. It's just storing those characters in an array. So if we hit run, you can see it just prints them all out one by one. Another neat thing we can do is we can run different kinds of methods on the string itself. So for example, there's a built-in method inside of Python. We'll talk about methods later in the videos as well. And that method allows us to check the length of a string. We can create a whole new variable, and we can call this string length, and we'll set it equal to len, open parentheses, name, close parentheses, and now I'm going to print string length. We can see 39 because there's 39 characters inside of that string. A simpler way to write that would have just simply been to say print len name. And now we can get rid of all that. make it a lot cleaner. When I run it, we get the same result, 39, because there's 39 characters here. We change this back to James and run it, we're going to get a 5 because there's 5 letters in the string James. Another thing we can do, let's say that we had a really long string and we wanted to find out if something was inside of the string without having to manually go through and look ourselves. We could actually do something like this. We could say print, and let's say if we wanted to find out if the letter M was in James, we can say M. I'm going to use double quotes just because I use double quotes up here. M in name. And now if I run this, true. Why is it true? Because James, the string James, includes the letter M. Now let's say, for example, I want to check if there's a 2, or at least the 2 character inside of that James string. And of course, it's easy to say, well, no, of course there's not. But, maybe this string had millions of characters in it. Then we wouldn't want to have to look through that with just our eyes. So we hit run and false. So those are just a few examples of the things you can do with strings. We're going to work with strings a lot throughout this video course because we're going to be doing things like taking user input. And if you remember, again, in an earlier video, you actually saw me create a variable that took user input. So I'm going to do that again real quick. I'm going to say name equals, and then I'm going to put input, and then what is your name? And again, this will cause the computer to actually prompt the user what their name is. So I'll run that. What is your name? I'm going to say James and press enter. Now the program's complete, but what it did was it stored James inside of name, and it stored it as a string. Okay. So again, if we print name, we'll see that whatever I type here, this time I'll type Timmy. Press enter. Of course, it prints Timmy. It's storing it as a string, meaning that if I do something like this, it's going to just take that and it's going to put it into the program as a string. Okay. So this is some pretty neat stuff. One other thing we can do with strings is we can actually cast them to other types. So let's say, for example, that I actually had a different type of input and it was age. And let's say that I was asking the user their age. How old are you? Automatically, when this happens, age is going to be a string because that's what gets created with this particular method. Input method is going to create a string. So even if I run this, I'll show you some things here. If I run this, how old are you? Well, I'm 39. It's going to print 39. But it's not actually printing an integer here. It's printing a string. So let's say that I want to change that string to an integer because I might want to do some mathematical operations on it later. What I can do is I can actually wrap all of this in parentheses like this. And in front of it, I can actually type int. And what that does is that does something called casting. It casts that answer from a string into an integer. And so we're going to do this right here. I'm going to run this. How old are you? 39. And of course, it printed out 39 twice because I told it to, but what I actually wanted to do was print type. So now we'll run it again. How old are you? I'm 39. Class int. But if I took this away and I ran this, how old are you? 39. Class string. Okay, so we can take a string and we can change it into a different class simply by wrapping the string in parentheses and then telling it what we wanted to convert to. So for example, I can even convert that to a float. And then if I said I was 39, it would convert it to a 39.0 because floats, of course, have a decimal point. All right. So some pretty neat stuff. I think it's a pretty good introduction to strings, and we'll do a lot more with strings throughout these videos. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and make sure to leave me a comment. Even if you don't have a question, those comments definitely help to grow the channel. So this is James with LearnToCode.cc, and I'll see you in the following video.